And joining us in studio, Tsepo Khadima, political analyst, Jackie Shandu, also a political analyst, and Oliver Dixon, social political analyst. Professor Peri Hanyane will be on the phone line. And you at home are most welcome to participate. We're on social media. It's at ANN7 TV. Good evening to you, gentlemen, and thank you so much for joining us. And of course, with Cyril Ramaphosa, now all eyes on him. It's do or die for the ANC. They cannot renege on the resolutions around radical economic transformation and, the list of other commitments that they've made. Tsepo, in your view, what is at stake here?
A lot is at stake. A lot is at stake is that we now have a leadership that has just been elected. So all of them are new, even those that maybe had been on the National Executive Committee before and are continuing, but the reality is that they are all new. So I read it that they will want to re-emphasize the message of democratic centralism, of leadership collective, in order to really, I think, lessen the pressure on the newly elected President Cyril Ramaphosa as the president of the ANC. Because one of the things that the ANC, if we look at over the years, they have at all material times tried to do was to really convey this message and portray this image of a leadership collective or of the organization, that the institution should at all material times be the one that is elevated above the personality in order to avoid the cult personality. And I think that's pretty much what they are going to do. So, but that also, it is a safety net for the newly elected President Cyril Ramaphosa in that we know in the lead up to the national conference and to the elective conference, there were certain positions that he took, he campaigned on, and he got the complete opposite of what he campaigned on. And now he has to be effectively the chief ambassador for what the organization has resolved and what the organization stands for. So I think by and large, to the extent that he will be wanting to be upfront, but he will pretty much, I think, want to make the organization, which is a correct thing, that is actually the entity, the African National Congress, more than him as the messiah, so to speak, of the ANC, because to do so will be to assume an exceedingly arduous task that I think would create problems. So effectively we will see, I think, that message of democratic centralism, leadership collective, in order for the organization to be the one that is at the forefront, so that at least the individual leaders are spared from having to carry the burden of wanting to be the institution or the organization.
So it's beyond personalities, it's more about
they have to go that
policy, but self-preservation is very important. Yes. We heard Cyril Ramaphosa talking about renewing the image of the organization, ensuring that it becomes the movement of Mandela's dreams. I mean, has it really gotten to that point where it had been tarnished to a level where even the leadership is talking?
Well, if I come in, Mandela's dreams, I think that's the mistake that is made all the time. The ANC did not start with Mandela. They are celebrating 106 years now. They've just celebrated that on the 8th of January. So therefore, 106-year organization cannot be an organization of Mandela, who is the centenary of his birth this year.
Perhaps that's the tagline, in bringing in or evoking the spirit of Mandela.
It's trying to evoke someone who the ANC understands as having been a major draw card for the ANC prior to the demise of apartheid. You'd recall that the ANC also took a conscious decision to make Mandela the face of the anti-apartheid struggle, and so that's the sort of kind of, clout that he gets globally, global icon as they call him. But it's ill-advised, it's misguided, because even if Mandela was alive, nothing speaks more than the actual material conditions of the black majority. So this thing of taking some major historical figure, because we know he's celebrated and is even somewhat liked by white people, it's not going to work. Black people are going to vote next year based on the material conditions that face them, the inequality, the unemployment, the economic exploitation on the factory floor, the ongoing white racist violations, calling black people monkeys, putting them in coffins, and the perceived powerlessness or indifference of the ANC. Just last week, Cindy, there was a settler farmer that killed a farm worker, accusing him of having used his tractor without permission. And these are all the issues that the ANC seems to lack the capacity or the political will to deal with. So that thing of just evoking dead people is not going to work.
All right, let's get a view from Professor Barry Hanyane. Thank you so much for your time. He is a professor with the University of the Northwest. Is Cyril Ramaphosa now has become the symbol of the restoration of the center of the ANC or the soul of the ANC?
Cindy, a very good evening to you, your panelists and your viewers as well. I think post the Nazareth conference, indeed, it certainly does occupy that position. But given the fact that your top 6 positions are made up of individuals from different persuasions within the slate politics, it then puts him in a corner where he has to work with everyone. Although his leadership is critical in this instance, I think the collective leadership of the ANC must rise under his leadership, and a new vision for the African National Congress must then be established. That vision, thank goodness, has been consistent with his campaigning message of taking the ANC back to the people. Whether the rhetoric itself will see the light of day remains to be seen. Let us not forget that in 2016 local government elections, plus minus 3 million middle-class ANC voters voted with their feet. And this puts him in a tight corner once again to bring back those voters and to deal with the internal issues that the ANC is battling with. The ANC that suddenly embraced the label of being somewhat of a corrupt entity. That image must be cleaned up. He must lead that process. He must then make sure that the unity within the organization is kept intact. So going forward, there are indeed serious obstacles that this leadership must start to deal with.
All right, stay on the line, Professor Hanyane. And also, we hear about dissenters calling for Zuma to be recalled. Otherwise, this is not seen as a leadership that has the intent of cleaning up the image of the party. What is your view, Tshepo?
I mean, I just take on the issue that, can the ANC fight corruption? If it styles itself as an organization that's going to fight corruption, they are effectively going to be deceiving or misleading the general public out there because they do not have any legal mechanism to fight corruption. Corruption is a crime. Under our constitution, it is conscribed that law enforcement agencies under the criminal justice system are the ones that must deal with all manner of crimes, of which corruption forms part of that. So it would be foolhardy for anyone in the leadership of the ANC to continue to increase the decibels on the anti-corruption message when they are not able to articulate the practicable steps that they will take in order to fight that corruption. It's not enough to simply say that we're going to fight corruption. You have to come out with the practicable steps. And you can't effectively articulate any practicable steps on how to fight corruption outside of what is provided for under the criminal justice system, which effectively reinforces the rule of law. So, for example, Jackie was making mention about a farmer who is alleged to have killed a worker for whatever circumstances. Now, for me, what would worry me is that we've not had any word from the newly appointed commissioner of the police, nor from the Minister of Police, Fikile Mbalula. They are the people that should have been right at the forefront to deal with that because there is a clear case of a crime that had been committed. Even in instances whereby there's allegations of corruption, unless the only active steps that effectively, let's say, ANC leadership or anyone who's a member of the ANC or member of the public can do to fight corruption is to be able to what? Report such to the law enforcement agencies. And in the event that law enforcement agencies do not act on acts of corruption or alleged corruption, then we must take issue with those because those law enforcement agencies, by the very act, would not have been compliant with the constitutional requirement which is their domain to fight crime.
But more and more, you're talking about the noise around the independence or impartiality, objectivity of law enforcement agencies. We know that there is a sector or criticism that these are compromised, that they are there with the intent of protecting and preserving President Jacob Zuma, and therefore it deems them less effective. And in your view, obviously the ANC would have to deal with those kind of perceptions.
You see, the problem with even these institutions, state institutions we speak of, is that their setup, seemingly, was under an unspoken consensus that they will be focusing primarily on the political class, the elected state officials, whether it's mayors, ministers, members of parliament, or the president. Now, what has happened, correctly so, particularly under the tenure of President Jacob Zuma as president of the ANC in the Republic, they have also had to widen their scope to say, if you are the Hawks, for example, if you are SARS, your mandate goes way beyond just state officials, public sector corruption. This is what has upset a lot of white monopoly capitalists and their black puppets in academia, in the courts, and across the spectrum in this country, because the common understanding in this country remains that whites are always protected from public investigation, interrogation, scrutiny, because we assume, this is a part of the ideology of white supremacy, we assume the innocence of white people. We assume the enterprising nature, the competence. We always assume the opposite with black people. So when you now try to reconfigure these institutions, to not be guided by the color of the skin or by whether one is in the private sector or in the public sector, but to really fight corruption without fear or favor, then it becomes a problem. Then they speak about, no, they are compromised, they lack capacity, or Sean Abrahams is a lackey of President Jacob Zuma. Why? Because now we're saying, you white monopoly capitalists, you white professionals, can be investigated, can be scrutinized as well.
All right, Professor Barry Hanyane, your view in whether these institutions are not taking prescription from the opposition, therefore being unfairly labeled to be the Jacob Zuma's keepers, if you will. How with the ANC going forward, obviously they can't just ignore these kind of nuances or aspersions being made in society.
Look, Cindy, let me differ slightly with what has been said already. I don't want to take a too radical approach in the analysis of this question. But one thing is for certain, is that our law enforcement agencies are now facing the issue of credibility deficit. In a sense, the image that they experience in the public has not been forthcoming as that which seeks to attract the public confidence. That must be reestablished. So in a sense, the new leadership in the ANC must make sure that the state functions impartially and all other agents of the state, be it the security cluster, be it the economic cluster, actually achieves the mandate that is given. So far, that credibility deficit is there, and it needs to be sorted out as soon as possible.
Rekhadim, I mean, we're obviously looking at what the manifesto or the January 8th statement would be, and Mr. Ramaphosa would be taking a mandate from the NEC. This is not his own personal memoir or, you know, an author document that is inspired by his own insights. I mean, what would they have to articulate in this particular message that will deal with the issue of lack of confidence or trust deficit in society?
Well, by and large, I think it's important for the African National Congress to start, admitting its own limitations, and limitations to the extent of what is it that they can do and what they can't do. Sometimes they overpromise. We talk about this issue of whether or not there's a trust deficit, or we believe that the law enforcement agencies are not doing what they're supposed to do. We might hold different views in that. We might think, ask questions as to why they have not shown enthusiasm to deal with certain issues. But for the African National Congress, they need to, at all material times, highlighting more importantly the fact that ours is a constitutional democracy, and the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So whether one is a member of the African National Congress or a member of the Democratic Alliance or Economic Freedom Fighters or whatever political party, or they are apolitical, they don't even vote for that matter, it's immaterial. The moment they assume any position in any department of state or in any organ of state, once they are in position, there are certain prescribed duties and functions they must carry out. And the African National Congress, as the governing party, should expect no less from anyone regardless of their political persuasion. I see that they are many times painting themselves into a corner whereby because they are the party that has been elected, many times they only want to limit calling into question and holding accountable only those that perhaps are their members, and outside of that, their duty, it goes far beyond an ordinary member of the African National Congress or even somebody who's in leadership. They need to be now looking over the country and asking questions. For example, they haven't asked the hardest questions with the crisis that is happening in Cape Town, and yet they are affected, and the African National Congress is a party in government. That crisis there is not something that can just be left to the Democratic Alliance to deal with, and the Democratic Alliance has demonstrated clearly that they don't have the capacity to be able to deal with that crisis. But the ANC itself has failed or showed no interest whatsoever. So again, those are some of the issues that I'm hoping that coming this tomorrow, when the January 8th statement is read, one of the things that we will now perhaps start to see is practicable steps that will be taken in addressing the key issues that are faced by the citizens of this nation, which must be attended to. For example, the President Ramaphosa, he spoke about the issue that we must make land productive and agriculture must effectively be the top priority for this nation. So we're hoping that tomorrow there can be details specifically say, what do you mean by agriculture? What type of agriculture to produce what, and what economic impact it will have? It's not sufficient just to say agriculture must be top.
And especially as you're saying that regaining the voter support, as we saw how the ANC were left limping in the local government elections, will be very imperative. And now, of course, there are other sorts of rumors around the ANC's January 8th statement. And the ANC has dismissed rumors that former AU chairperson Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma will succeed President Jacob Zuma as state president. ANC Secretary General Ace Magashule says the ruling party will not entertain mere speculation. And reports claim that President Jacob Zuma has furnished a list of requirements if he were to step down. One demand is rumored to be that Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma should succeed him as president. The rumor comes as there are growing calls for President Zuma to be recalled as state president. And the new NEC did not discuss the recall issue at its first meeting held on Wednesday, according to the SG.
He is the biggest hater. He is a terrible.
Again, it's about rumors, and all of that takes away the function and the focus of creating that Batupele material change in the quality of life of people. Do you think that there's a strategy for the party to now zoom in on what is most important, getting their hands dirty, as it were, doing the work?
No, absolutely. We're talking about, 106-year-old movement. 24 years into political office and state power. So the crucial importance of planning, whether it's succession, whatever the case may be, strategizing, is nothing new for the ANC. What I do find crucially important at this moment, due also to the media onslaught, you see, to try and preempt and create this atmosphere of suspicion and paranoia. We will need, in particular, the top six and the NEC to be very focused, very resolute, very vigilant in terms of ensuring that the processes of the ANC are internal, they are not influenced. Because what the media is trying to do with these speculations is to then influence NEC members, top six members to begin, to take a particular posture going into the meetings that will be coming of the NEC itself. So we hope that sense is going to prevail, and whatever happens, whatever decisions the ANC makes, they are informed by what the leadership itself has applied itself in and thinks is the way to go, not by the pressure, the undue pressure that the media is trying to exercise on the ANC.
Professor Hanyane, you think it's a conspiracy theory that the party should not entertain, as it is improbable, but based on what we've seen, history has taught us that the ANC is also often speaks in different tongues, if you will, and mandashing on certain decisions as well.
Yeah, look, you're using a very interesting concept right there. Look, I think we need to acknowledge one thing, that the ANC is a broad church, and it remains so. What my concern is that we need to evaluate this organization, firstly, as a fighter for freedom in this country, but most importantly, post-1994, as a party in government. And so the evaluation of the ANC in both quantums, if you want, must be done independently. As a party in government, I think let us accept that there are challenges. Quite rightly, there are successes that must be celebrated. And where there are challenges, there is no room for mandashing on issues of public policy, on issues of public choice, on issues of establishing the law, as it were. These are some of the things that going forward, and in rebuilding the ANC, I believe, they must be sorted out. The whole rhetoric of self-correction must begin to take a meaning of sorts, and we are interested to find out as to whether results, tangible results on the ground, will be achieved in rebuilding the so-called the new ANC.
Rekhadima, the whole rumor around what Jacob Zuma may be negotiating as part of his exit, and that he may have requirements, is this a probable scenario of clandestine meetings for his imminent recall, if the rumors are anything to go by?
Look, rumors are going to run like wildfire, and it's to be expected, particularly fueled by the mainstream media, because they are accustomed to do so. And effectively what is happening here is nothing other than an inoculation. If I know that this is a bitter medicine I'm about to give to you, I don't give it to you in a full spoon. I give a drop and a drop and a drop until your tongue gets accustomed to it, and then you can take the full medicine measure that is prescribed. And that's effectively what the media has been trying to do with the various rumors that we have seen, and rumors of what the NEC might be discussing or not discussing. It is important, I think, for us to maybe look at another comparative case in terms of where you have got the head of state and the head of the party not being the same person. And that is a country that does not practice multi-party democracy, and that is the People's Republic of China. The People's Republic of China, the current president, who is also head of the party, the Communist Party, is President Xi Jinping. But he succeeded President Hu Jintao, who succeeded President Jiang Zemin. So if you look at all of that, there has been a period of at least 18 months from the time that the party elects the new chair of the party, or the president of the party, and that that person then becomes the president of the republic, and yet they don't have free democratic elections as we do in South Africa, but yet they have been having the discipline and been constrained to ensure that there's that orderly handover of administrative power from one leader to the next, where then they don't have the two centers of power. Now, here in South Africa, the question then becomes, if we look back in 2008, what has happened, the question that I think now is maybe being looked at, and thankfully Transform RSA in their letter to the National Executive Committee of the ANC, I think clarified things even more, that what happened in 2008 was downright unlawful, was not in line with the Constitution of the Republic, not even provided for in the Constitution of the African National Congress. And therefore, what they are attempting to do now will once again be unlawful, and also not even in line, or is not provided for in the Constitution of the African National Congress. And if indeed the issue of the so-called two centers of power was such an issue, it's going to be exceedingly difficult for anyone on the National Executive Committee to even adequately or sufficiently answer to why was the elective conference or the national conference that happened in December, why did it not deal with this issue? Because it was all clear that there will be no President Zuma in Lutuli House following that elective conference. They didn't discuss it. There is no conference resolution on it. So it therefore means that the ANC itself has effectively generally accepted the fact that there is this 18-month period of transition from one, but it must be orderly, not haphazard, with a potential to bring about very dire, disastrous effects. And I think that is pretty much what we need to be
We'll come back
at,
to that particular, whether there has been concessions and ventilate this particular rumor in that has the events around President Jacob Zuma, the litigation, given impetus for a recall or whether the ANC would have to take learnings from 2008 and to prevent further factions or split in the party. But first, of course, ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa paid a courtesy visit to the family of struggle stalwart Henry Fazi in Duncan, and the visit is part of a series of events leading to this year's January 8 statement to be delivered on Saturday in East London. An emotional Fazi family said that they are grateful for the visit.
Siyavuya kakhulu siyifamily silibulela elixesha because amathuba anjena anqabile. Siyaqala thina uyifumana into enjengalena into yokubana kuze upresident akazongena kwelikhaya apho umama notata bathatha inxaxheba enkulu emzabalazweni kunye nabantwana babo.
I'm going to get up. My cameraman is also going to follow me as I show you what exactly is happening here in East London. There are people who are selling. There are different things here. There's a lot of regalia. There are T-shirts. There are caps here. My cameraman is going to show you. There's also a lot of material here in the streets of East London. We also know that people are also getting accreditation here outside City Hall. But I'm also going to take a step this side so that you can see what is happening at the back of me. Here at City Hall is the entrance where a lot of media people are coming to get their accreditation. A lot of other people are also getting their accreditation ahead of tonight's gala dinner, where we're also going to be seeing a lot of suits, a lot of two-pieces that are going to be worn today. It's going to be quite interesting what will transpire there tonight. And then tomorrow, it's the long-awaited statement by the president of the ANC, Cyril Ramaphosa.
That's Sindisiwe Twala, reporter, giving us a scene setter as to what we can anticipate a little bit later on as the gala dinner gets underway and the ANC's January 8 statement to be delivered by ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa tomorrow. And while we're on the subject of what is likely to come out of the ANC's January 8 statement, and it's not only ANC leaders and supporters who have gathered in East London for the anniversary celebrations. Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta arrived in East London to join these celebrations. He met ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa and two leaders who discussed the relationships between the two countries. Kenyatta will be at the Absa Stadium on Saturday to witness the January 8 statement.
The issues of the president of the country, as you are aware, these are the matters that the NEC and the SG have said that it's a matter that is not on the agenda. And at this point, I don't want to discuss an item that is not there. We would be speculating.
Thank you so much, Minister.
Okay.
The office keeps calling. Jabba, call.
So as the guests trickle in, we'll be dipping in and out of East London. There's David Mahlobo, NEC member of the ANC. We were still on the subject of the succession and how the ANC can improve on the struggle for the top positions. Professor Perry Hanyane, with the separation of powers or having two centers of power with President Jacob Zuma, what are the dynamics in Cyril Ramaphosa being his boss in the ANC and vice versa in government? Professor Hanyane? All right, we'll get him back. Your view for how that is going to play out.
Yeah, there's been a situation. Is there two centers of power? The answer is that there is no two centers of power, because in this case, we have a situation whereby the president of the republic is an ex officio member of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. So there is no disjuncture there. And secondly, the president of the African National Congress already is in the presidency. So the question then becomes, well, how can anyone sustain that there are two centers of power? But even if they were to sustain that, look, there will be two centers of power, we know that there would have been two centers of power in 2009 elections if President Mbeki had indeed won the Polokwane conference in December 2007, because then you would have ended up with a leadership core that would not have been that would have been, so yeah, that would have brought in some challenges. But be that as it may, we already also have observed that in the last 10 years or so, we've had this difficult relationship between Luthuli House and the Union Building, and most of it is, I believe, born out of a fundamental misunderstanding of what the Constitution of the Republic provides for. That by and large, once somebody is elected President of the Republic, then to lead the third branch of the state, being the executive, that job of that person is not according to what the party requires, but is according to what the Constitution prescribes. So from a policy perspective, of course, is that there will be policies that come from the governing party, but those policies themselves are subject to prevailing legislation, which is subject to the Constitution. So I have not seen any really, I would say, substantive arguments being put forward to advance. However, the opposition parties, what they are dreaming and they are praying for, it is my suspicion that at night when they pray, they are praying that the African National Congress must fumble and make an unlawful call for their president to step down. Because if they make the unlawful call that the president of the republic must step down, then they will be able to sustain their long-standing accusation against the African National Congress that the African National Congress does not respect the Constitution of the Republic. So they are praying that let the ANC fumble because it will give them ammunition or it will add currency to their war against it. But also, on the other hand, remember, once the president leaves, for whatever reason, it means the third branch of the state, being the executive, must be reconstituted. Now, we know what happened with the local government elections. We saw what happened with the motion of no confidence secret ballot. We also saw what happened at Nazareth in the elective conference. So therefore, even the African National Congress, where it sits today, it cannot tell anyone that indeed, if President Zuma steps down, they will have an ANC president at Makambandlovu as well as the Union Building, because there is absolutely, and the opposition parties, it is my strong suspicion, and I believe I'm 100% correct on that, that they want the ANC to recall the president so that they can then install a coalition government so that by 2019 the ANC is reduced from 50 plus 1%.